What's up, fellow humans? How's it going today? So you think you're smart, huh? You think you're smarter than a whale? You think you're smarter than a dolphin? What about a monkey? How about a rat or a snake? Cat? I think like most people, when I was young, growing up, I was under the impression that humans were the most intelligent animals on the planet. It wasn't anything more than the fact that we have opposable thumbs, we've built buildings, we've created language. But when we really break it down and ask ourselves as we get older, what defines intelligence, we quickly find that intelligence has many different forms. There's emotional intelligence, there's spatial intelligence. When you really look at what humans have done, it seems that our intelligence was almost a flaw or a fluke. In other words, evolution created the ability for us to communicate better. In other words, when we created speech, apparently, in order to formulate speech, it came at the cost of things like wisdom teeth and difficulty, or the ability to choke. In other words, we could have evolved with a completely different system which may have been more efficient, but for some reason speech is very crucial to us. So speech is what we think separates us from animals. And of course, when you hear a dog bark, a person, you hear people ask, well, I wonder if they're saying something. But these days, it's more like, I wonder what he's saying. And I think people are growing up into the realization that, the reason why humans want to separate ourselves from animals, it's a two-part thing. The reason why we consider ourselves superior is for two reasons. For one, we didn't have the scientific knowledge of how animals actually communicate that we do today. And now that we can analyze brains and see which sections are for language and speech, we see that animals are much more complex. Like an octopus. And one of the perfect examples is an octopus can open a child-proof pill bottle. There's some people that can't open a child-proof pill bottle. So different forms of intelligence, different use of our abilities without our culture, and part of human culture is part of what makes us successful. Doing it alone, we would we would suffer. So culture, community is part of our success story, if you will. With animals, it's very similar. I think one of the most fascinating aspects is cetaceans, or dolphins, porpoise, and whales. They are amazingly intelligent, and of course we've always known this. Dolphins are smart, whales are smart, but how smart is the question. One of the things that is really depressing to learn is how much sound pollution damages the water in the ocean. Sound pollution in the water in the ocean damages the ecosystem, the marine ecosystem, the ability for whales to communicate. These are creatures that communicate over thousands of miles. And the one factor that I learned, which has made me want to make this video, is something I hadn't considered, is that light doesn't penetrate matter as well as sound does. So we can look at another human and see externally, maybe if they have a disease or a skin rash or something, but if somebody has an internal issue like cancer or a tumor, we can't see that from the outside. It turns out that dolphins, when they are using, various animals using their sonar, can actually, because sonar doesn't just travel through the water, it travels through the animals themselves, and they can see the health of another animal. They can literally see inside of each other, and that the ears are the gateway to the soul of these creatures. But the most fascinating aspect is that the newest research is what they believe, and of course it hasn't been confirmed and can't be confirmed very easily until we are a dolphin, right? Was that not that when a dolphin has a picture in its mind, it can share that with another dolphin through sound. So the dolphin doesn't just hear a sound. That sound is literally forming a picture in their mind. So the sounds are pictures. There's a lot of study that goes into this. It's way out of my league of scientific expertise, of course. But it's utterly fascinating. To move from cetaceans to, say, primates, One of the things we always hear about is chimpanzees and how they throw their poop. It fascinated me, and I thought earlier to myself, could that be a sign of higher intelligence? Because I think, why would an animal throw poop, and do they do that in the wild? So I did some research. I found out that in the wild, chimps will throw rocks and sticks and whatnot when they feel threatened or upset. The better they are at throwing rocks and sticks, the more accurate their aim. They are considered more intelligent within their group. You will get more respect because the part of the brain that processes the hand-eye coordination, apparently that is a major part of our evolution into what we have today is for humans. That speech starts with throwing rocks and sticks. That may sound absurd, but parts of the brain that handle these things are intertwined, and the more we find out about it, the more amazing it really is. So when a chimp is at the zoo and you see him, you see these videos of these chimps sitting around and they seem like they're getting agitated, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, they just throw a pile of shit and hit somebody in the face, and there's several, and they are hilarious. All I think of is I feel bad for the chimp. He's upset, Imagine being that intelligent, because we just think of them as animals. Imagine being that intelligent, sitting in there with a group that maybe you're forced to be with. Maybe they're not even chimps you like. And then these bars all the way around, and then these people just come and laugh at you all day. I mean, that's got to be very taxing for a person to think, well, they're just, they don't know if you're laughing, and maybe they enjoy the company. And I won't get into the, the details about, well, some animals need help, and they were raised in captivity, and they had no parents, so we have to raise them as humans. They'll die without us. All this is true, but it doesn't mean that we have to stare at them through cages, at least not in the way that we do now. The last time I went to the zoo several years ago to take my son, I didn't want to go, and when I did, it reminded me of why I don't. My wife and I were just looking at the lion, and he was just roar, the saddest roar you've ever heard, roar, just like crying, and I was like, I had tears in my eyes. We were both almost crying when we left. I'm like, this is horrible, but it's not like I'm just this bleeding heart liberal who doesn't understand the other side of it. But yes, I believe zoos are kind of the old circus of the past. We need to move past these ideas, and things like SeaWorld as well. Like somebody was saying, imagine being these animals in captivity, and all the sounds from the loudspeakers, the music that's playing at SeaWorld, or any of these captive areas where people watch whales and dolphins, all of that sound is transmitted through the water. So apparently the shipping industry today is and there was a documentary I saw on Netflix, I think, about it, about how bad the noise pollution is in the ocean. And these oil companies that are using these explosive charges in order to map out the seafloor, and they're causing these major strandings of whales and dolphins. And we hear about them all the time. Yes, they are caused often by human, especially military sonar. It will literally drive them insane, and they'll do anything they can to escape it. So what do? We can sit here and scream about Greenpeace and save the world, and that's not what I'm here to do. I'm really here to just give you my viewpoint on this, that, we all need to give animals the respect that they deserve. And one of the biggest questions is, where do we draw the line? Is a mouse, less valuable than a rabbit or a horse or a dog? Who draws the line and says, well, these are pets and these are mindless creatures? Even rats have been shown to be altruistic and help each other out. There were studies done where rats would help one of their partners out rather than get a treat, or help another rat that was in distress. And they've even have some studies to show that rats actually can show regret and remorse for things that they've done. That is amazing. The lowly squirrel who shows no emotion on their face, who uses their tail for what they call flagging, they get frustrated. They have these emotions too. They can get angry, they can get frustrated, or they can show love, or, all of these things we thought were human for so long. Emotions, we know better. We know that animals mourn their dead and return to the sites. So the point being that we look at language the wrong way, and we look at intelligence the wrong way. Being intelligent doesn't merely mean that you can build things with your hands. And if we were going to compare intelligence to the long haul of history, I would say that humans are probably some of the least intelligent creatures ever to come around, because we can sit and do deep thinking, but so far it hasn't helped us become happier. It hasn't helped us to lead more relaxed or, enjoyable lives. For example, cetaceans, they spend very, very little time feeding. It's a secondary thing, they eat when they need to. And the rest of the time they spend socializing, creating bonds, families, spending time together, And we have made work our number one focus, and that's what's caused this whole epidemic of loneliness and anxiety and fear and depression. That really what matters is family. It's like the other day when I was picking up my son from school, and I thought years past, I used to like living in a bigger city just because I didn't have to deal with everyone knowing everyone. And as I get older, I realize how desirable that is, to know your neighbors and to know the people, to be able to feel connected to those around you, because we really are social animals. And, if we could give those animals around us the same respect as we give, I guess, more, it seems like sometimes people give animals more respect than humans, and I'd like to add that as a side note for all the people out there who may be Greenpeace oriented, or save the whales or save the dolphins, save the pandas, whatever it might be. It's a noble effort, but never think that just because some humans are horrible with animals, that animals have more value of life than a human. There's a huge reaction to how much abuse we've done in this planet, and the overreaction sometimes causes people to be violent and cause more problems, for the greater good, so to speak. But I'm not going to get into the environmentalism side. This is more of just the realization that they're more intelligent than we give them credit for. I'm reading a book called Nature and Psyche right now, which is just about that actually subject. And I wanted to read this, a couple of these notes that I took, but I guess I maybe don't want to make the video too long, so I guess that's the video of my opinion, and maybe I'll just read a few of these notes from this communication of animals. It says, it's obvious that cetaceans communicate. As to whether this communication can be considered a symbolic language remains to be determined. However, there is strong evidence in favor of it. The presence of Broca's and Wernicke's areas, which are parts of the brain that humans also have, are a major indicator of this possibility. Not even in the other higher primates are these areas as developed as they are in humans and cetaceans. Language is also a powerful evolutionary force. In humans it was selected for so strongly that our air passage evolved to better help for speech, but actually hindered other survival concerns. The arrangement that best serves speech also increases the chances of death from choking, impacted wisdom teeth, and asphyxiation. It is basically good for speech and nothing else. Without considering speech, it actually evolved against survival. So, the word does matter. Human language does matter. And I wanted to make that side note on that for a lot of folks who talk about how we may have once communicated psychically, how we need to get back to being able to more or less read each other's minds and just know what each other thinks. And I know people personally who have tried to develop that, to say they want to, assume that they know what another person means. And I said that would not be fair to other people. Nobody, that's not the reality I think that we want to go into. I don't want anybody reading my mind, and I don't want to read anybody else's mind. I want to speak when I choose to speak, and hear when I choose to hear. So I think that obviously nature favored language, where it created this ability to have language over other evolutionary concerns. So I think we should give that the credit it deserves, I guess. Cetaceans evolved almost perfectly for complex communication and possible language. They have a distinct advantage over us in that their primary sense is the same as their primary means of communication. Both are auditory. With primates, the primary sense is visual, and the primary means of communication is auditory. So in other words, we take in through our eyes, but we learn through our ears. Cetacean sound producing and analyzing abilities are so adept that it's possible for a cetacean to project an auditory image identical to the sonar image they would receive. So a dolphin wishing to convey the image of a fish to another dolphin can literally send the image of a fish to the other animal. The equivalent of this in humans would be the ability to create an instantaneous holographic pictures to convey images to other people. If they indeed do this, we only know that they can. Now I'm going to go on and skip on. Here's the part about flesh. Flesh doesn't, or flesh does not block sonar nearly as much as it does light. Cetaceans are able to use sonar to actually see the internal workings of other animals. It is the same process as ultrasound that is used prevalently in medicine. Not only are they capable of this, but it's been proven that they do commonly use this to read emotion and states of health. This type of direct knowledge of another being's internal states would greatly benefit personal interactions and the possibility of a society. Another factor of cetacean auditory abilities of interest is the vast amount of information conveyed. They are able to produce sounds commonly up to 200 cycles a second, a range 2 1/4 times what our own hearing can comprehend. Cetaceans also have approximately 2 1/4 times the number of neurons receiving the input. Add that on to the fact they have several sound production organs, it's apparent that they can convey and receive 20 times. I'm being summoned just a second. I had to break away from talking about cetaceans so I could go wipe another mammal's butt. If we lived out in the ocean, I wouldn't have that problem as a parent. Okay, so cetacean audio perception is like our visual, spatially oriented, not temporally oriented. They perceive sounds as complex wholes rather than a series of noises. So basically, they're picking up pictures out of what they're seeing. The thing about intelligence, I'm just going to read this last part, it was just about the animal intelligence. Unfortunately, the full implications of what we've said has been difficult to take, this is from a different page, but it's just the end, has been difficult to take in. Excuse me. There is no great chain of being, no higher and lower. All creatures have adapted effectively to their own environments in their own way. Human smartness is just a particular survival strategy among many others, not the top of a long ladder. It took a surprisingly long time for scientists to grasp this. For decades, comparative psychologists tried to work out the learning abilities of different species so that they could be arranged on a single scale. Animal equivalents of intelligence tests were used, and people seriously asked whether fish were smarter than birds. It took the new science of ethology, created by Nobel Prize winners, blah, 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 blah. Okay. I somehow missed a page there. They could not be arranged on a universal scale. Human smartness is no smarter than anyone else's smartness. The question should have died for good. Artificial intelligence researchers came along later, but they too could not easily part from medieval thinking. The most important problems to tackle were agreed to those that represented our highest abilities. Solve them, and everything else would be easy. As a result, we have ended up with computer programs that can play chess as well as a grandmaster, but unfortunately we have none that can make a robot walk as well as a 2-year-old. Whoa. Stuff's falling over. A 2-year-old. Let alone run like a cat. This really hard problem turns out to be those we share with lower animals. So, I guess that's it for now. Then there's a couple more pages about something that they have called a cymoscope, which is helping them to try to read and see the pictures that dolphins communicate. I think that's all I'm going to read here. Basically, dolphins, it says that they've even found dolphins talking in their sleep, but they weren't speaking dolphin, but rather doing perfect imitations of humpback whales. Dolphins don't sleep very long. Cetaceans, they have to breathe, and I'm utterly fascinated by animal intelligence. I haven't even got into the aspect that's the most fascinating to me, but I've already done a couple videos on it in the past, which were, you know, corvids, or crows, ravens, as well as blue jays, or scrub jays, which I have a nest next to my front door this last year of these scrub jays, you know, within a foot of my head every time I walk out the door. But they knew that it was safer there than out in the open. I mean, they're not just dumb birds. Some of these birds have, of course we know birds aren't dumb, but a lot of people don't realize that, you know, some of these scrub jays can have up to 20 to 30 different hiding spots or caches for their nuts and their, you know, stuff they're saving up, and they'll move these caches over and over. They'll look to see if another bird sees them while they're burying it, and then they'll come back and dig it up later and move it. And not only that, but they remember every place they put them. Well, more or less. The thing about humans is that as smart as we are, we have to write everything down to remember it. We have intelligence, but we can't remember half the things that even a chimpanzee, certain primates can actually have better memory recall, short term. So if you flash a series of numbers to a human and the same series of numbers for just a brief second to a primate, I think it was chimps, they'll recall it faster than humans and much better. It's just part of their evolutionary trait. They may not count, but they count. You know what I mean? And just like dolphins may not see the way we think they see, as far as the way they speak, but those may actually create a visual sound. The amazing nature, you know, the cuttlefish, the octopus, the intelligence of these animals, far superior to ours. And they're living in an environment where communication is through vibrations, electrical signals, sound. And there's so many angles we can take on that. If you haven't seen the crows solving puzzles, just Google crows solving puzzles and take a look. You'll be amazed. They can solve 4 to 5 part series of problems where they have to get a stick, get a little ball out so they can knock out another stick, then use that to pull out, you know, it's amazing. It's more than just amazing, because it shows that they have forethought. And that animals actually do learn from other animals' mistakes. That if they see another animal die, they know they don't want to die. Well, that's more than just being, that's being mortally conscious. That's being aware of your own mortality. And just like humans, they want to preserve that. So they learn as much as they can about their environment because it helps them survive, which is what I try to do as a human too. So, hope you've enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching. Talk to y'all later.